Tonight on Free Minds TV, we'll be discussing courtesy cards for police unions. We'll also be talking about a court case out of India, marijuana decrim efforts in Arizona, and a really big hamburger. All that and a whole lot more coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
And welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV. We've made it all the way to episode 160, and it is still Toby here with you.
And Nick.
All right, Nick, we've got a ton to discuss today. Coming up on the show, we are going to be talking about some medical marijuana efforts being made in certain parts of the country, as well as a gigantic hamburger, the world's largest, in fact. We'll be talking about that, the new world record, and where you can go to taste this ginormous beast of a burger.
I assume none of it's left at this point.
Well, I don't know, maybe.
Well, you could have gone to taste it.
It's a pretty big hamburger, Nick. I think it would take quite a while to eat, so we don't know. We'll be discussing that, but first, I wanted to talk about some matters. I think this article is coming from Pennsylvania, but this kind of program happens in many states across the United States, and it's courtesy cards for police unions and friends of police officers. And what do these really mean? Are they meant to get people off on a ticket, or are they just meant for people to carry around and feel good? I mean, it's same. Sometimes I think about it with the stickers you put on your car with the support the troops. I mean, what are you supposed to be doing by that? Oh, please don't pull me over. I sent in a check to support the troops, or support state troopers, or whatever it is. What do they exactly mean? And I think you've got an article discussing some of that.
Yeah, it's actually coming from Philadelphia specifically, but like you said, these kinds of cards are issued all over the place by police unions, benevolent associations, things like that. And what they are is basically blue business card-sized squares of paper issued each year by the police department's largest union and mailed to all members of the department. This is talking specifically about Philadelphia, the department's 6,600-plus force. The card asks that all courtesies of the organization be extended to the bearer of the card. Printed alongside those words are the seal of the Fraternal Order of Police, along with the name of the union's president and a space for the police officer to sign his or her name before giving it to a friend or relative.
Nick,
so it seems like, what are the courtesies that could be extended by police officers? I mean,
well,
that's what
aren't
the
they supposed to be
is.
courteous to everybody? I mean, they're working for the public. It seems that's just, they're supposed to treat everybody the same way and be courteous to everyone, regardless of whether they have a card that says, please be extra courteous with me.
Yeah, well, that's the way they're supposed to do it, but the real world doesn't always work that way. Now, technically and officially, the cards have no power. But at one time, police said displaying them could have meant the difference between getting a ticket and getting off scot-free.
Oh, you're telling me it no longer means that to anyone? That's just BS.
Yeah, well, why would they still issue them if they don't actually do anything?
Well, that's my question. And it's not just here in Philadelphia, Nick. This happens all over the place. And whether it's a card that you carry or a sticker you put on your wall or some kind of a thin blue line or something, some of them are meant for just police officers or relatives of police officers or people who write checks to police officers. And to me, it just seems like you're getting into gray territory of asking for preferential treatment for essentially knowing a police officer, being one, or paying them off. So I guess maybe you don't get a ticket because you've already paid the fine via a donation or something?
The fine, well, yeah, but in the case of a fine, it actually goes, in most cases, to a state's general fund, not directly to the police union. And you're not even necessarily talking about the police department. In this case, you're talking about the union, the people who lobby for the taxpayers to have to pay more out in pay and benefits. So it's not like you're helping subsidize the police department. Now, basically all the police officers interviewed in Philadelphia said that the cards are not used anymore, even if they were at one point. However, other unions in other parts of the country or benevolent associations aren't even denying that the cards are used. In New York City, however, the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association still encourages officers to overlook or reduce minor infractions committed by cardholders. It's a time-honored tradition, said Albert O'Leary, spokesman for the PBA and the NYPD's largest union, but it depends on the situation. Say you're driving 110 miles per hour that card's not going to help you. But if you're doing 45 and a 40, you present your card, you're a friend of the PBA, you might be told to go along your way. So openly admitting there that, yeah, if you're a friend or a family member, you're going to get preferential treatment.
If you've paid your dues or you're connected. That just seems very wrong to me. It seems like police officers should be extending everyone courtesy because they work for us. I mean, it just seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, in other cities, the cards have been done away with. Police department in Toledo, Ohio, ended them in 1990 after a newspaper uncovered that friends and family of police officers often use the cards to get breaks on traffic tickets. What a surprise.
Well, duh. Why else would you issue them? I mean,
Cleveland
it's a no-brainer, Nick. I mean, you're issuing the cards saying, please extend every courtesy to the bearer of this card. What else would it possibly be used for?
It's a wink and a nudge. I mean,
What's
nobody here explains what they mean other than that. And the police officers, even the ones interviewed in Philadelphia who say they're not used, they're not really trying to deny that that's what the cards exist for. They're just saying, oh, well, it's not necessarily going to get you off of a ticket.
I can't believe they actually admit it in New York City. Well, that's what we do. It gets you off a ticket.
And in Philadelphia, Police Lieutenant Frank Vanor said that he hadn't seen someone use one of those in a long time. I honestly don't think they mean anything. Okay, so he's basically said, I mean, if that's a direct quote, then what he was saying was, that's what you use them for. I haven't seen anyone use one in a long time. So basically it is a get-out-of-jail-free card or at least a shot in the dark, if nothing else, to try to get yourself out of a ticket. It shouldn't work that way. Police are there to enforce laws enacted by the legislature, not just do whatever they feel like and collect money from the taxpayers. Seems that way to me, but apparently certain departments do it differently. And I point out these aren't necessarily departments doing it. In most cases, it's the Fraternal Order of Police. So you've got these organizations and the unions basically issuing these cards.
Anyways, whatever. I mean, I think it's time to do away with them everywhere.
You're not going to...
You're essentially, though, Nick, what you're doing is you're putting police officers in kind of a difficult situation. I mean, they're humans as well, and so when they're pulled over and someone gives them this card, they're like, well, this could be a friend of a police officer, and it's pulling at the human heartstrings a lot more than if you're just treating everyone the same way. And as a police officer, I mean, you should be treating people in the same way, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
Seems like it would be time to do away with these.
It seems like it, but I mean, what are you going to... I mean, they were already really asking for favors that the police should not have been granting. So even if they do away with the courtesy cards or the bumper stickers they have out this year, there's no reason that they wouldn't be replaced by some other symbol or password, whatever it is, that effectively does the same thing. That's a way of saying, hey, I'm connected with either the union or with a particular police officer, and you should let me go.
Yeah.
I mean, people can just come out and say that. Do you know so-and-so who works at this precinct? And
let me go now.
That'll get you out.
Anyways, life's not fair. I guess that's the perfect lesson. Life is not fair, especially when you're dealing with the police. It can be very unfair sometimes. All right, anyways, we do need to move on a little bit and hopefully make things a little bit more fair, in Arizona at least, where medical marijuana question will appear on the Arizona ballot. Now, this is a kind of a big deal to report on because there's only 14 states right now that allow sick and dying individuals to use the medicine their doctors recommend. So Arizona will very likely be the 15th state. And I think it's kind of important to point this out because it's another one moving along. And hopefully, I was thinking this would happen sooner than later. Other states will start to pick up steam and follow suit right along with them. Arizona is also interesting because it's a ballot initiative. A lot of here in New Hampshire, the marijuana question failed because we can't have ballot initiatives. Yes, over 70%, a supermajority of the voting public think that sick and dying people should be able to use the medicine their doctors recommend. Well, the old governor vetoed it after it was passed by the Senate and the House. But in Arizona and lots of other states, it's not so. They do have ballot initiatives. They had to go out and collect signatures. 145,698 signatures were required in Arizona to get this measure on the ballot. And after collecting signatures for quite a while, Arizona's MPP turned in 252,000 petition signatures to make it the very first question on the November 2010 ballot. So they went above and beyond, over 100,000 signatures more than they were required to do so on the ballot, and did it before any other questions got on there. So I mean, there's definitely a big push going on there, and it kind of shows that, well, this is what the voting public wants. They're sick of seeing sick and dying people either be arrested or not allowed to get the medicine that they and their doctors feel they deserve. So this is some good news coming out. We'll have to keep an eye on it because it's not coming out. We won't know until November. There is a Stop the Pot campaign going on, of course, run by some of those reefer madness folk and some police officers out there, some of the unions getting together, Nick, to try to stop this. But I'm predicting this is going to go through. I mean, just based on, they nearly doubled the amount of petitions needed, and they did it in a very short amount of time. And I mean, you look all over the country, well, polls show that, yeah, we want this. It's only the old people with white hair, the idiots that still believe the reefer madness stories, and of course, the people who make their livelihood, the prison guards, the police officers, the sheriff's departments, those people, the people who are invested in keeping marijuana illegal so that they, well, can continue to arrest and prosecute innocent people and collect a pretty good paycheck for it. So I'm thinking this is going to go through. Hopefully it will. Hopefully some other states will start to take off from this, but I guess we'll just have to stay tuned.
Yeah, hopefully the opposition spends as much money as possible while still losing.
Well, the problem is a lot of the money the opposition spends is taxpayer money, because a lot of the opposition is produced by police.
When the police unions, and they're not the only groups that contribute, not every union contributes to these campaigns, but when police unions are doing it, I mean, essentially those union dues are in a roundabout way coming from taxpayers, because they generally come from wages of police officers, which were dispensed from taxpayer funds. So that's essentially where, when it's either the police unions or the police chiefs association, even if they're not using money from union dues to do it, in some cases, like when police come out to testify against marijuana decrim proposals, if there's debate about it in the legislature, in some cases, they're on the clock.
And they're doing it on company time.
On company time, on taxpayer time.
Exactly. So that's just you and I paying for them to campaign against something that, well, you and I may be in favor of.
Yeah.
Sick.
Wrong. That's
Wrong.
the way it works.
That's the system for you. Once again, not fair. All right, Nick, when we come back, we are going to be talking about, well, some delays in justice, but the wheels of justice are slowly turning, maybe in India.
Very slowly.
I think there were thousands and thousands killed about 28 years ago or so.
Yeah, so the event we're talking about is very old.
Very old, but
the court case is, the court decision is new.
Yeah, it was actually huge in the news, I guess, right around when I was born, but thus it's died off, and it's back because the wheels of justice are moving. We're also going to be talking about a gigantic hamburger neck. This thing it's huge, it's bigger than this table. We'll be talking about that and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Hi, I'm Ian Freeman from Free Talk Live and FreeKeen.com, and you're watching Free Minds TV.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It still is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
And please log on to freemindsmedia.org and click on the chip in button. We really need to raise some more money to finish off the set. And well, it's just not moving without your donations. So even if you only have $1, $2, we'd really appreciate every penny that you can spare, because we've got no more pennies to give, Nick. We're all out of our pennies. So if you've got a couple you can throw our way, freemindsmedia.org. Click on the chip in button. Really, I mean, we're not asking for much. If you can only afford $1, that's great. That's fine. We'll take $1. All right, moving right along, Nick. This is a story that a lot of people, at least the younger viewers, probably haven't ever heard about unless they're reading the news recently. It's something that I never knew happened until I heard that there's convictions going on in India. Is it in India?
Yeah, it's in India. It's in
foreign land.
Bhopal, India. A court on Monday convicted 7 former senior employees of Union Carbide's Indian subsidiary of death by negligence for their roles in the 1984 leak of toxic gas that killed an estimated 15,000 people and the world's worst industrial disaster. It was a pretty big one, 15,000. That's a lot of people to die. That's more than in 9/11. On the morning of December 3rd, 1984, a pesticide plant run by Union Carbide leaked about 40 tons of deadly methyl isocyanate gas into the air of Bhopal, quickly killing about 4,000 people. Lingering effects of the poison raised the death toll to about 15,000 over the next few years. In all, at least 500,000 people were affected, the Indian government says. More than 25 years later, activists say thousands of children were born with brain damage, missing palates and twisted limbs because of their parents' exposure to the gas or water contaminated by it. The Union Carbide subsidiary's former employees, all Indian nationals and many in their 70s, were sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay fines of 100,000 rupees or $2,175. All were released on bail shortly after the verdict.
Oh, so this isn't any, no heads are rolling here.
Yeah, I mean, this is people in the United States will complain, rightly so, that you don't necessarily get a speedy trial, that justice moves very slowly. It takes a long time to either clear your name or get convicted and get started with a sentence. And you can complain all you want, but it doesn't take that many years.
26 years?
Yeah.
25, 26 years.
Yeah,
That's a long time.
It's 26 years ago, and
Now you're
they're
being
just
called up
convicting
for a
people now,
trial.
and they're getting 2-year sentences.
Well,
And they've
maybe-
been out for like 26
Well,
years.
maybe, what's this mean? When the last drop of oil has finally leaked out of the Gulf, I don't know, when I'm around 50, we're going to see some heads rolling for this or something?
Maybe.
Or
That would be, it would be about the same time frame there.
when I'm pushing towards retirement, we can
Well, I
finally
guess
see
it's
someone pay for... That's probably just about when the Gulf is going to start to flourish again, right?
Who knows what will happen with that. I think since there's not a whole lot of experience with oil leaks that are that big, so,
Well, you know-
although I guess there was a lot of oil dumped in by the Iraqis during the first Gulf War. Saddam had a lot of it dumped. There have been very large oil spills, so Americans tend to think of the Exxon Valdez as bad as it gets. But it's not like very large oil spills have not happened before. Not saying it's a good thing. It's just you can also overstate things and say that the Gulf is going to be dead for 100 years. Well, it's a very big place.
But okay, the thing that this whole article and the oil spill in the Gulf and all these other industrial disasters brings up the point to me, Nick, is when you're talking about businesses and corporations, does that shield certain people from responsibility? This in India, this article we're talking about, where tens of thousands of people died directly, and then upwards of hundreds of thousands to millions of people were affected after the fact.
The purpose of a corporation is just a legal fiction. I mean, it's a legal entity with a lot of the same rights that a person has.
Right.
And the limited liability corporations were created for the express purpose of limiting liability.
Right. Well, but it shields
I'm not saying that's right.
individuals from doing wrong. So you can be like some CEO of a corporation, do things that are putting people's lives in risks, and it's the corporation, it's not me.
It does offer some degree of protection. It's not that you're 100% shielded all of the time. It just makes those prosecutions more difficult, and it makes civil suits more difficult. And I think that people should be held responsible individually for negligence or...
Well, Nick, you're telling me if it was some individual,
malicious action.
if this was one person who was doing his chemical stuff in his room, and suddenly his bomb went off and it was a disaster and it killed this many people, his head would have been gone 25 years ago. If it was one person who decided to take it upon themselves and go out and drill out in the Gulf and then spill all this oil everywhere, he'd be done. He'd be like, people would be sicking on him. But because it's a corporation with CEOs, there's so much protectionism that goes on with it. It's so detached from the individual. If one person ever did the things that corporations do, well, they'd be in jail for it. They'd be sued. They would have no money left. They'd go bankrupt.
Yeah,
but instead, we've created these fictions, these imaginary people to take the fall, and, well, they never actually take a fall because they're imaginary. Or 26 years later, they get 2 years in prison.
In terms of civil cases, it doesn't make a huge difference whether it's a corporation or an individual paying out. So in terms of a civil case, corporations will still, their money's just as green as an individual's. When it comes to criminal cases and criminal liability, well, it's not like a corporation is an actual person who can serve time in jail or anything like that. And when it comes to what happened in the Gulf, obviously BP is responsible for it, and I think they should pay the full cost of the cleanup. They may not have enough capital to pay the full cost of the cleanup, in which case I think a healthy percentage of their profits should be set aside for years and years to come until they can sort of make things right. But I don't know that was actually negligence. It gets a little difficult to tell.
Well, I have no idea because I wasn't there.
Accidents do happen.
Accidents happen, Nick, but there's a certain amount of, well, do we actually know what we are doing? Do we have the technology to be drilling this deep if something goes wrong? No. That's negligence right there. If you knew that this could happen and we couldn't do anything about it and you decided to drill anywhere, well, that's negligence, Nick. That's criminal negligence. You're putting people's lives at risk, and some people did die. What was it, 11 people died? Thousands of lives are being ruined from the economy from this, and business and all that stuff. Not to mention the ecological disaster that's going on here. There's got to be negligence there. I mean, you're telling me that they had no idea that this was risky and something like this could happen? To some extent,
any accident, there's an element of negligence there. I mean,
and what I'm saying is if it's an individual, Nick, they're going to be much more cautious than if they've got this corporation. And I think that there's a major problem there with giving corporations this protection, giving individuals corporations and being able to hide behind this fictional character.
Yeah, I think it is a problem when you have individuals working at a company that is incorporated.
Yeah, because I'm sure every person on that rig, the people who are on the rig was like, this is a bad idea. Some S is going to hit the fan and no one's going to be able to do about it. Individuals on the ground probably knew, but they're not the ones raking in the money or getting that big old paycheck, Nick, making those decisions of, we'll do it. What's the risk? Okay, well, here's how much money we're going to get from that. And if it blows up, who cares? We lose a few people, well, they're expendable. And why do we care?
Yeah, I mean, oil rigs are not the safest place to work either. I mean, I think to some extent the employees who were working on the rig probably had an idea that they're dangerous places to work, oil rigs. It doesn't exactly conjure up warm and fuzzy feelings for me, and it pays pretty well. Obviously, nowhere near what the CEOs are getting, but as far as compared to working at McDonald's or bagging groceries, working on an oil rig pays pretty well because people know it's dangerous and it's hard work, and you're on the platform in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, you don't get to go home every night after working a shift. Well, my only point here that I'm making is we need to do something about corporation. I mean, the way they're taxed, the way that they're fictional, but they're given the same rights and none of the responsibilities, it seems. I mean, they don't have the same responsibilities as an individual, yet they're given all the rights of an individual. It just seems completely messed up.
If we're going to have limited liability corporations, which I don't think that's something that's changing anytime soon, you can debate it all you want. I mean, to me, I don't have a problem with taxing them because they are created by government. The issue I have with, say, the income of regular people being taxed is, well, you own yourself, and the money that you earn, that's the fruit of your labor. If you own yourself, and then the money you earn from what you do with yourself in your life, seems like it should be your own money. Now, if you're a corporation, well, that's a legal fiction. It's a made-up thing. It's an institution created by government. It only means something because it's got the force of law behind it. The courts recognize it. Maybe if we're going to have any extra protection built in at all, it makes sense to have these legal fictions that are not people, that were not created by God or by natural forces, but instead created by the government. Yeah, they owe their existence to government, so as much as the government wants to tax them, that's fine by me. I don't think there's a moral problem with taxing corporations for that reason, because they're created by government and they get certain privileges from being organized that way.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but I do also think that, well, individuals need to be held responsible when they're making decisions for corporations. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is if you're making a risky decision that's putting other people's lives at risk, well, you shouldn't be able to hide behind a corporation just because of that. Your actions, you should still be responsible for them.
Right, you should be responsible. I mean, I just think it's easy to, when something does go wrong, I don't think that every time something goes wrong, somebody needs to be sued. I mean, there are reasonable risks everybody takes every day.
But if I
Something
do
could-
something that you could have seen in the future was a dumb idea,
Well,
Nick, I'm
Would
responsible
a reasonable
for
person
that.
have expected it to happen?
Yeah, well, would a reasonable person as an individual have gone and drilled in the middle of the Gulf knowing they don't have the technology to stop it if something goes wrong? No, a corporation
probably
would have
not.
done that. A
They-
corporation would have done that, and an individual would have never done that because they would have foreseen into the future, well, this could really go wrong, and there's nothing I as an individual could do about it. But when you have a corporation behind you, well, all that risk is taken away. Anyways, Nick, we do need to move on. I've got some really good news to report to you people. Well, it's bittersweet news. The good news is an even bigger hamburger has been created. The biggest in the entire world. It's broken the record books. The bad news, well, it took the record out of the United States, brought it to the land down under. Sydney, Australia is reporting that it took 120 eggs to hold it together and 4 burly men to flip it, but a Sydney cafe has set a record by making the world's largest burger. Now, folks, this is an amazing burger. The Whopping Beef Burger, cooked at the Ambrosia on the Spot in Sydney, Radwick, tipped the scales at 95.5 kilograms, making it the largest ever created. Now, I'm not good with math, Nick, but I think that's roughly somewhere around 212 pounds or something. I don't know. Somewhere around there. That's a big burly, that's a burger that weighs about as much as me. A little bit less, but man, that's a sizable burger. The burger required 81 kilograms of mince, I think that's the meat, right? 120 eggs, 16 tomatoes, 120 cheese slices, 2 kilograms of lettuce, 21 kilograms of bread, and half a kilo of barbecue sauce. No mayonnaise. Oh, well, that's disappointing, Nick. You know, I am going to go ahead and say, I need mayonnaise on my burger. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to break this record someday. It is going to be my life goal to cook the world's biggest hamburger.
210 pounds or 213, whatever it is.
By the time I get around to breaking the record and practice
Probably be a full
my
ton by
grilling
then.
skills, Nick, and recruit, I'm going to need at least 6 burly men to flip my burger. It's going to happen. That's my new life goal. Then I will be complete. Everything will be good. Liberty in our lifetime, well, you know what? I'll be happy if I can have a 300-pound burger. That would be nice. Am I wrong?
300-pound burger, it would be pretty cool to set the world record. Although that's got to be fairly expensive.
Oh, yeah, it's not going to be cheap, Nick. That's why I've got to start my
Not
planning
that
now.
expensive, though. I mean,
No, it's
a
something
couple
that's
$1,000s.
doable. It's something that's doable, and it's a good goal
$1,000.
to beat. If you'd like, no one's been donating to finishing the set. You want to donate towards me bringing the record to the biggest burger back here to the United States.
You could bring it back to Keene, New Hampshire.
freemindsmedia.org is the address. Chip in a few $1,000s, I'll make a burger. How about that? We'll make it right here on the show. We'll eat it on the show. We'll share it
You're
with
not going to eat the whole thing on the show.
I might eat the whole thing on the show, Nick. It's going to be delicious. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. I thought it was important to bring some good news. I mean, New Hampshire still does hold the record for the world's biggest meatball. We did report on that. It's a big guy that's up in Concord, New Hampshire.
It would be cool to have the biggest hamburger. Seriously, if anybody out there in our local viewership is watching, I'm not going to.
Doesn't matter. I'm going to beat the record someday.
But
it's
somebody
my
in the
life goal.
meantime, somebody could set a new record
sure.
here.
Bring it back to the United States because my burger it's going to top 500 pounds, Nick. That's probably a good size burger.
It's a ridiculous size. There's got to be a physical limit.
No physical limit. Anyways, until next week, it's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
freemindsmedia.org in the meantime. Have a good night.